Today,
Hello, and welcome to She Rises, the podcast where women in leadership take center stage. I'm Tiffany-O, your host and the founder of Virtual Partner, where we champion humanity in the workplace to build thriving organizations. With over 30 years of experience in change management and servant leadership, I'm here to bring you powerful stories, actionable insights, and inspiring conversations with trailblazing women who are breaking barriers and redefining success. Whether you're climbing the corporate ladder, leading your own venture, or looking for that next level of impact, this is your space to learn, to grow, and to rise. Let's dive in.
we are honored to have Dr. Xaulanda Simmonds Emmanuel join us on the She Rises podcast. Now, Dr. Xaulanda is the Chief Passion Officer of the Xaulanda Group, where she leads with a mission to create people-focused solutions for organizations. She has a strong background in organizational development, strategic consulting, and performance refinement. Dr. Xaulanda is passionate about fostering environments where people thrive, where there's this environment of trust. She empowers leaders and teams through clear communication to help them to have impactful collaboration. Let's dive into her journey and uncover the transformative insights she has to share with us. Welcome, Dr.
Thank you
Xaulanda.
for having me. What an intro. I was like, who is that chick?
Oh my goodness. I'm really excited, everyone. What you don't know, Dr. Shao and I are in an informal mastermind group together.
Mhm.
We both are authorized partners for Everything DIS. That's a Wiley brand in the 5 behaviors of dysfunctional teams. And so we're both really focused on like the people part of organizations, which I believe are the currency.
Mhm.
And so when I got to, in one of our calls, I heard Dr. Shalanda speak. And I was like, wait a minute, I need to sit up and listen here. And so I'm really honored that you agreed to come and share more insights in this sort of format with folks. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so
So,
much for having me. I mean, we've had such an amazing exchange of ideas and communications and collaboration in our mastermind that being on the podcast hopefully will glean some insights for the audience that they would walk away the way we walk away from our mastermind, feeling full and energized and ready to lead in their respective spaces. So
oh,
thank you.
that is awesome. Yes, I agree. So let me ask you for everyone, for the benefit of those who don't know you and haven't been in an intimate setting like I have on our mastermind groups, what inspired you to establish the Showski group and what challenges did you face along the way? Now, I have to admit, when I saw it, because my kids are from Southeast Asia, I saw Showski. I wonder if that's like Southeast, like what is the vibe with that? Talk to me a little bit about the brand and what was the motivation behind this brand and as you were sort of
Mhm.
coming up, like I want to hear, like, was it always easy? How did you get to this place of success?
So it's the Sky group.
Oh,
Um,
see, just Sky Group,
which is it's interesting because my name starts with a XAU, Shalonda, and
Xaulanda.
my daughter's name is Shaskia, which is a XAU SKYA. And
Wow.
so there was a ongoing debate when we were going to name the company, not to name it so close to her name, but obviously I won that debate because I wanted that name. And so I pulled Mama Rank. She's my business partner. And really the thought behind the name is because we are partners and both of our names start XAU, it embodied both of us, but
Mm,
sky is really the limit that you could take your business. Really, it's really up to you as the founder how far you want to take it. Some people only want to take it to a certain point and then maybe they might sell. Others want to take it on for generations so that their offspring and their grandkids and their great grandkids could probably enjoy it. So we just felt the name was kind of appropriate since the both of us were doing this together. Has the journey always been easy? No. That's the real answer. No. I think with entrepreneurship or whenever you're starting your own business, it's so much of a personal journey because
Mm,
you're giving birth. It's an idea that you've come up with, and you're giving birth to this idea and hoping that it will manifest in a physical form in reality, right? And so I tell my daughter she's my first baby, but Chaska is my second baby, right? So
mhm.
yeah, that's a little bit of history as to how that came about.
I would agree. As I think about Virtual Partner, when I started Virtual Partner, it wasn't called that at first. When I first started,
Hmm.
I used my own brand name, Odutoye, and I was really good at connecting some of my clients and solving their problems. And I put people together, right? That connection. So that
Hmm.
when I first created my business, it was the Odutoye Connection back in 2002. And that
Oh, I like
really, it's interesting, right? And then
that.
in 2007, as I gave birth to my second child, as I started
Mm,
to have clarity of focus and purpose.
right.
And it's so true. It does feel like you're waiting with bated breath for something
Hmm.
amazing to come to fruition as you're doing this. And there's the huff and the puff and the pant of bringing to life, like you said, this idea. And I love how you
Hmm.
really articulate that. Thank you so much for that. And then also being able to create like legacy work now at this phase in life, Xaulanda, I feel like the business that I'm creating is and the work that I'm doing in the business, not just with my clients, but on the nonprofit side and on the
Hmm.
volunteer side, really is around creating a legacy and leaving an impact and a mark on generations to come. And that's a lot different than 15 years ago in 2007 when I stood up Virtual Partner. So very interesting. So I love your analogy and what you can be doing in business. Talk to
Mhm.
me a little bit about maybe like your journey, how you got to the place of shifting and becoming an entrepreneur. Were you always an entrepreneur, or did you start in the workplace and have a journey?
It depends on how far back we go. So interestingly enough, I did a exercise recently, a self-reflective visualization exercise, and it takes you back to when you were a child. And it
Mm-hmm.
asks you, what were the kind of games you played as a child? And interestingly enough, I was an only child for 16 years.
Mm.
So it's not like I had a lot of playmates, but my dad was pretty handy. He's an artist, and he built me this little house in our backyard. But instead of it being a house, I made it into an office. And I was the boss.
Mm.
And I had my imaginary employees. I had my desk in there. I had my phone. I was talking to people. I was speaking Spanglish. I was making deals, I was negotiating, and I was really, when I think back, I must have been like 7 years old. So it's interesting because I hadn't had that recollection until recently. I would have said, no, I haven't really. I always knew I wanted to be in business. But I didn't always want to know that I wanted to be an entrepreneur until this recent exercise kind of revealed that I was like, oh, but I was running my little business at 7 years old. So my journey after high school, I went into business administration for my bachelor's with a concentration in management. And I worked as a secretary, moved up to purchasing agent, and really spent quite some time in materials management for a aluminum manufacturing company. And then I took those transferable skills and went into healthcare, which
Mm.
was quite a drastic shift, but it goes to show that once you have certain foundational skills, they can be transferred from one industry to the next. And I think healthcare really is where I flourished. It's where my heart was because I felt like even though I wasn't a doctor or a nurse in the clinical side, I felt that as an administrator, every decision that I made had a potential impact on somebody's life. And
Mm.
sometimes if you can't get the supplies that's needed for the operating room in time for the clinicians to do what they needed to do, someone's life may be at risk. So there was definitely a higher purpose that I felt being in healthcare, even though I was on the administrative side. So I was at the executive level for about 11 years at the
Wow.
hospital. And during that time, I obtained my master's in business administration. And then when I left there, I went into the university setting for a little bit,
Mhm.
and then I went back into healthcare. But I have now my PhD in industrial organizational psychology. And I kind of took the scenic route to get here because while I was at the hospital and I had divisions that I was managing, I was very much about how do I bring out the best in my employees so we can do the best work. And I was actually nominated by my colleagues to become the train the trainer for the Interact program that was developed by Dr. Allenbaugh out of
Mm.
Portland, Oregon. And just having interactions with him, and that's how I really got some understanding of organizational development. And then, of course, I was in a leadership role. I was coaching individual team members and the managers that reported to me. And so now in hindsight, I could see how all the little seeds were being planted for me to be in this position to now be a co-founder of the Shaskai Group. And sometimes we want to take the expressway because we
Mm.
going to get us where we need to be faster. But there is value in taking detours in life and learning certain lessons and exploring certain places and spaces and people that you probably would not if you were just on the expressway. It's such rich tapestry to your journey that helps to build a foundation to get you where you need to be. So,
Mm. That is, I like the analogy of the detours. I
mhm,
believe in the time that we're living in now with people experiencing rifts, reduction in workforce, face the potential death of DE&I. People are very afraid of what's going to happen to them. And
mhm,
framing it like this, I believe could be very empowering. In as
mhm.
much as it's not what's happening to you, this
It's
could,
what's happening for you.
yes, it's a shift. And it,
It is.
yeah,
It
it's
is.
a shift.
If I could just share as you're talking about people being laid off and on workforce reduction. I didn't take an expressway. I'm originally from St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands, and that's where I was at the hospital. And I
Mm.
moved to Minnesota for a career opportunity to advance my
That's
career.
very different.
Yes, very different from America's paradise where there's sun, sea, and sand and walking around in bikinis to Minnesota where you better bundle up for most of the year or you're going to freeze your buns off. But I made that leap because of a servant leader. My
Mm.
CEO at the time, before he left the hospital and before I left the hospital to go to Minnesota, um, was truly the definition of a servant leader. He saw you for who you are. He saw the value you brought to the organization. He wanted to invest in you. He wanted to bring out the best in you while you were in your respective role at the hospital. And
Mm.
he really rallied the team for the greater good of the organization and the community that we were serving.
Mm.
And so when he called me with an opportunity to go to Minnesota to help him because he was a turnaround specialist, I jumped at
Mm.
it. And I was like, in retrospect, I was like, why would I leave my family, my friends, my career, everything to follow this leader to some place where I didn't know anybody. I just had this job. I only knew him when I arrived. I'm uprooting my daughter. We're starting from scratch. And unfortunately, 2 months after I made that leap of faith, he passed. And
Mm.
with any CEO transition, there's some people at the top that are going to have to go when new leadership comes in. So, literally 5 months after I moved, I lost my job. So, I'm in this new
Mm.
place where I don't know anybody. And I was in job transition for 11 months. And people might say, how did you survive for 11 months? Well, faith and a prayer and a lot of support from family and friends, right?
Mm.
It might sound like it's the worst thing that could happen to me, but quite honestly, it was one of the best things that happened to me because
Why so?
the blessings that came out of those 11 months of transition is when I first moved to Minnesota, my LinkedIn must have been like 100 people.
Mm.
And when you're trying to look for a job, yeah, you're going to apply for the jobs, but you have to go into major networking mode. And within that 11 months, I must have had coffee with over 300 people because every time I met with someone for coffee, I connected with them on LinkedIn. That's how I was tracking my progress. And I
Mm,
met the most amazing people. And I have about 10 amazing, diverse women from all over the US that I've met while I was in Minnesota. And we remain friends today because we were bonded in that experience. Many of them were also in job transition, and they're just angels in my life. Like, I can't imagine my life without these women. So that
mm,
was a blessing. The other blessing is what it taught me is that I don't have control over everything, but there's definitely a higher plan for me, and I just have to trust the process.
mm.
It's maybe scary, right? Especially when those bills start coming in.
Hello. Hello.
Let's be real. People gotta
Hmm.
eat. You gotta keep a roof over your head. You got a call payment coming in. At least in Minnesota, there were amazing resources. Of course, I had savings and other ways that I was able to sustain myself for that 11 month, but I was very proud that my daughter did not feel the impact of my job
Mm.
loss. She was still able to go to dance class. She was still able to participate in after school activities. That was my goal. Like, nothing else, my kid's gonna be okay. And
You
because
know,
she was okay, I knew I would be okay.
I really appreciate your story, your experience, not and your personal story. Here's something my husband shared with me recently. I was in Mountain View, California, and I spoke at Microsoft. And when
Mhm.
I was preparing for that talk, one of the things that I was sharing with him is similar to your story that many women from other places, immigrant women,
Mhm.
which was the audience I was speaking to, as they're going through transition and landing in a new place, there's so much fear and uncertainty. And my
Yeah.
husband gave me this amazing quote I'm going to share because it just like
Yes,
reminds me.
yes,
He
yes.
said, honey, remind them that faith and fear both believe in something that has not yet happened.
Happened. Yep. Yep.
Fear, right? Fear is this can be a limiting belief in something that is not real, right? But you believe it.
Right.
Faith is the assured expectation of things hoped for, the evident demonstration of realities, though not beheld, right? So both
Mhm.
are belief in something you can't see. So then the
Yep.
question is, will you lean into your fear or will you lean into your faith? And I was like, oh, honey, that's a really, I
That was pretty profound. That was pretty profound. The other thing with fear is oftentimes we're fearful because of what we may have experienced in the past,
love.
and it's creating anxiety that it may happen again in the future. And so what I've found, because I've moved around a lot, so I've
Mm.
kind of, even after that experience, I moved to Florida, I moved back
Wow.
home. So I move around a lot. But what I've found is if you stay in the present moment and you do what you can do in this present moment, because only this present moment is what we have control over. We don't have a control over what happened in the past. We don't have control what's happening in the future. We have control of what's happening in this present moment. And when we stay present, oftentimes, if you get centered enough, you don't worry about the fear. You're like, okay, what is that one thing that I can do in this moment to move me closer to or farther away where I want to go? Or do I need to pivot? Or do I need to redirect? Or do I need to rest?
That is very powerful. I think that's the making of your TEDx talk, Dr. Shao.
Well, stay tuned. Who knows? Yeah,
Okay, so that's a really great call out about harnessing fear with mindfulness and
yeah,
staying really focusing on the present and really channeling our energy to like this moment and all that we can do and
mm,
accomplish in this very moment. Pretty
yeah,
powerful. So now let's talk a little bit about you mentioned being a mother and you
yeah.
mentioned an amazing career and you mentioned sort of now this business that you've brought to birth. How do you balance the demands of running a consultancy with your personal and professional commitments?
Well, I'm an empty nester.
Hmm.
So I have raised a beautiful daughter, and she's off living her own life now, which is great. And we talk maybe 10 times a day because not only are we very close personally, we're trying to run this business, right? So there are things
Yes.
that we bounce off of each other all of the time. Personally, quite honestly, I've just been on a journey for the last couple years since she's been off on her own,
Hmm.
getting reacquainted and falling back in love with Xaulanda.
Wow. Talk to me a little bit about what that means.
Oftentimes, when as we're growing up, we have the expectations of our family and elders and communities and siblings and all of that stuff. And then we transition into our 20s. And then we're more aware of what those social expectations may be that we need to fulfill. Or you
Mhm.
need to go to college, or you need to go to vocational school, or you need to get a job, or you need to do this. And in your 30s, by then, thank God times are changing, but it's like, are you going to have a family? Are you going to get married? What's your relationship like? It's like all of this pressure and expectations are put on you. And while most of it is well intentioned, it doesn't always serve us. And so I really got into this journey of getting to know who Shalonda is during that 11 months of transition because I had more time. Even
Mm.
though I was stressing, even though I was networking and raising my daughter at the time, I didn't have a job. So I had time, the luxury of time to say, who is Shalonda now without this title? Right? Because oftentimes our identity is defined by the work that we do. And that led me into a journey of what am I passionate about? Like, what would get me excited to get up every day and do? Or what am I passionate about that I could show up every day and be the most authentic version of myself? It just, you ask a lot of questions. And so once my daughter graduated and I got her through college and she's off now, it's like, okay, how do I redefine being a mother?
Mm.
Right? Because no longer she doesn't need me anymore.
Not in
Right? And
that
no
way.
longer can I say, you need to do it because I told you so and I'm your mother. No, she's an adult. And I have to trust that I did a good job. That when she pushes back on what I'm saying, Shesky, maybe you not want to consider this, and she's pushing back, she knows what's best for her life. I'm now
Mhm.
here as a guide, as a support, as a friend, as a partner, and we're on this journey together, but it's no longer a parent child dynamic, right?
Mm. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing like sort of that balance and how you
Mhm.
can, if for those who are listening, if you're in this place of transition, um, William Bridges talks about managing in the neutral zone, like when nothing is happening, you're caught in between an ending and a beginning. And
Mhm.
this neutral zone is nothing is happening. So what do you do in that space? And you filled that space with self-care,
Going
self-love,
in, going in.
redefining your values, your future, strengthening those relationships and redefining them with your daughter, and creating a bridge. Some of us climb the ladder, so we're just moving like this. Others, someone sends the elevator down for them, and
Mhm,
others, like you and I, build a bridge, right?
mhm.
We're bridging some of those crossover skills with some a new experience, and on the other side is something that we really have no idea what it's going to be, but it's amazing. And it
Yeah.
sounds like that is what you
Mhm,
have done. So for those that are listening, I hope that you have that gem as a takeaway. I want
mhm.
to shift a
And
little
being
bit of
comfortable, and if I could just add before you
yes.
shift, being comfortable in not knowing.
Mhm.
It's I know that many people find discomfort in what they perceive as uncertain situations, or where they feel that they don't have the security or the stability that they need because of whatever is going on. Sit in that. It's okay to be uncomfortable for a little while, because I think what we find is in that discomfort, if you go inward, you find your strength.
So many
And then you
gems.
don't have to worry about the fear. You can lead more into the faith.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. There's your talk. You can, you can steal part of my quote. Oh, this has been great. Oh man, wow. These are like pivotal moments that have impacted your career path. What
Mhm.
advice would you give to someone who feels like their leadership journey is stuck or stalled?
What advice would I give to someone who feels their leadership journey is stuck or stalled?
Yeah, like so we talked about when you are leaving something and you have a riff or something like that, but we're talking about like emerging leaders. They're trying to get to the next, whatever that
Mhm.
is in their role as a leader. And
Mhm.
for whatever
Is
reason,
is it really stuck or stalled?
mm, talk to me about that.
There is a difference between pausing and waiting. And I learned
Mm,
this when I was doing this came to me when I was doing my coaching certification. There's a distinct difference between pausing and waiting. Sometimes you need to pause because either the timing is not right, maybe it's not your time yet, maybe there's something you need to learn in that moment of pause.
mm,
But waiting oftentimes is when it's not an active stance. It's like you just waiting. You have no control. It's like waiting for the bus and it's late and you don't know when it's gonna come. You're just waiting. Like,
mm,
but if you're pausing, there's energetically it feels different, right? So
mm,
if you feel that it's stalled, the question is, one, is it really stalled? And if it is stalled, why do you think it's stalled? You got to
mm.
go in and find out. It's your journey. Like nobody else gonna live your life for you. People gonna have a lot to say about how you live your life, what you do. They're gonna have opinions, and that's fine. But as a leader, I feel like if as a leader, you don't have that self-awareness and you don't continuously do that self-discovery, how are you going to put yourself in a position where you can best serve?
So let me get back what I think I'm hearing, Dr.
Mhm.
Shalanda. What I think I'm hearing is pausing is intentional. It's a deliberate act and it's a choice to be reflective, as you mentioned. Uh,
Sometimes you have to pause, not by choice though, but it's not where you may not be actively moving in the direction, but you're actively still processing and learning from this moment of pause,
so
as
what I'm
opposed
hearing,
to when you're waiting, right?
yes. Okay, let's make that clarity. So I think for those who are listening, the difference is being passive or being intentional. And so if
Mm-hmm.
you feel like you are in this stalled place, I'm hearing Dr. Shalanda encourage you to take a moment and reflect on whether or not you're waiting on someone else to do something. And of course, waiting means you might miss an opportunity because you
Mm-hmm.
missed your chance because you were not really focused, or you're being reactive, you're waiting on someone else to hand you something, or
Mm-hmm.
you're just not being decisive and you're hesitating. But pausing, like you mentioned, if you've been pushed into a pause, you can still be very deliberate about your choices and what the next steps are, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's very
It's
good
almost
advice.
like, yeah, it's almost like imagine you're in this space and there are five rooms,
Mm,
five doors, and you're fixated on this one door over here. I'm just waiting for that door to open,
mm,
but that door has to be unlocked or opened by somebody else. If you're in that space and you're saying, okay, I'm in pause, I'm gonna keep my eye on this door, but let me look around and see what else is available to me.
mm,
Maybe there's another way that I can get out of this moment of where I'm feeling stagnated. Or is there somebody else I need to connect with? And maybe it's not this door that I should
mm,
be so fixated on because it's not going to serve my higher purpose. Maybe it's door number three that's opened by somebody completely unexpected in a completely different direction that's going to give you that detour that we talked about to put you
mm.
back on your path.
I love it. Ah, this is awesome. So everyone, if you're listening, I'm not even going to ask Dr. Shalonda how much she charges for an hour of coaching, but you just got a micro coaching session. Let's talk a little bit now about staying motivated and developing skills in the workplace. You talked about being an administrative leader in healthcare, and
Mhm,
you also talked about the shift to being a people leader as
mhm.
well. And so how do you continue now as an executive coach and an doing organizational development? How do you continue to develop your skills and stay motivated in your work?
I'm an avid reader.
Mm.
I'm an avid reader. Quite honestly, after I finished my PhD, I was like, if I don't have to read another thing, I would be fine. But it didn't last very long. I just figured I was just burnt out. But I love reading. I love learning. I love, even though I'm an introvert, I love these one-on-one conversations because then I get to understand someone's perspective on a much deeper level. And I find because I take the time to have to network and do these one-on-ones, I learn different perspectives. Even if they're different from mine, we don't have to always agree on everything, but you may open up a perspective for me that I had not even considered. So, being in different spaces, being in different places, interacting with different people, and just always looking for an opportunity to learn and grow. It doesn't have to be in a formal coursework setting or in school. But for me, if I'm not learning every day, I feel like I'm dying. I'm
Being
just
a lit
closer to death. Yeah, we need to be living and learning and growing and having fun while we do it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, or else I'll just wither up and die. So,
Oh, so you mentioned early on about the reason you went to Minnesota,
mhm,
and it was because you had a mentor and someone sent the elevator down for you. And all of
mhm,
a sudden now you're in a different role, you're rising, you're thriving. So let's
mhm,
talk a little bit about mentoring and mentorship programs. How
mhm.
can they be structured to effectively fast track leadership development for women in particular and women in business?
Well, even though I've accomplished what I've accomplished in life, I have a mentor.
Mhm.
And I believe we've never talked about age, but I do believe she's younger than me.
We can learn a lot from that next generation, can't we?
Not much younger, but I believe she is younger, but she has more years of experience in organizational development, leadership, and talent development than I do.
Mm,
And she's in a completely different part of the world. She's out of Canada.
wow.
So the perspective that I get from her is so rich because not only do I understand the technical components of what she shares, but I get to get a glimpse into the culture of the
Mm,
spaces she's in and the types of organizations she's worked with. And then she is a dynamic, beautiful Black woman
wow.
that lives in a space of intersectionality that I'm not in that intersectionality. I mean, I am a Black woman, we have that in common. But there are things about her that are very different than me, but she's been my mentor now about 4 to 5 years.
Wow.
And and I need to tell her this. She has touched my life in a way that words can't really express the gratitude. And now we've become good friends. So I'm like, let me know how I can help you. How can I? And I'm sure she gets value in it because we've had this relationship for a long time, but I just have an immense amount of respect and admiration for her as my mentor. And then I do mentor other people. So
Wow.
she pours into me and it gives me an opportunity to learn and grow in that space. And I use whatever expertise and life experiences that I have to pour into others. And what I find with mentoring, I think there needs to be a shift in mindset from this more experienced person imparting all this wisdom to this person who is probably considered entry level or whatever. On my team, I have two millennials that are
Mm,
much younger than me, that may not have the same experience as me, but I understand acutely that they have a very distinct perspective on how work should be done, on how their community or their peers see being in the workplace. And when those of us who are older do not allow younger generations to have a voice within organizations or to be able to express themselves freely without fear of retaliation or repercussion, we are doing a disservice because the perspective they provide is so challenging sometimes when it's so different from yours, but that
mhm.
helps you to grow. It helps to open up your mindset. So now when they tell me stuff where before I might have pushed back, I'm like, tell me more. Help
That's a
me
good
understand
question to
this.
ask. The "tell me more"
Yeah,
question
tell
is
me more.
a powerful question.
Help
Um,
me understand where you're coming from because I'm not seeing it. And by the time we're done with the conversation, my mentor, Mr. Nelson, who plucked me from the Virgin Islands, took me to Minnesota, he used to say, ask it 3 times. When people tell you something and you're not quite understanding it, say, tell me more. Or why do you have that perspective? Or why did you say that? Like inquire and ask like 3 times to get a deeper understanding of where that person is coming from because they're coming from somewhere. They're coming
mm,
from their background, their lived experience, their culture. And even though, unfortunately, we like to put ourselves in boxes, oh, we have white and black and Hispanic and Asian, and none of those boxes we put each other in are monolithic. We don't all fit in the same box. We all have our own distinct box because we all have our own racial background, our ethnicity. Some people have disability, whether innate or acquired, or seen, visible or not visible, right? We all have our own religious background. We all have our spiritual beliefs. We all have our sexuality, our indigenous heritage, our nationality, our gender. Like, we are all very complex human beings, and that's what makes us beautiful. But we can't continue to just put ourselves in boxes because we all just make it's comfortable to group people together.
I appreciate you going in this direction. I want to just call out something powerful you said about shortening the leadership runway
Hmm.
for people in the workspace related to mentoring. And one, you because I have an ambitious goal to shorten the runway for women from the front door to the top floor in less than 10 years. And I
Hmm.
really am curious in your perspective how we can do that. But before we do, one call out about mentoring is how important it is for us to sort of look in all directions, right? So instead of what I heard you say, instead of just looking up, maybe we need to
Hmm.
look to the side, look across, because there may be some in non-traditional age brackets that have deeper, richer experiences that they can add value and to help us to grow. But in the same way, if you have this sort of mix on your mixed generational workforce, it's also important to use
Hmm.
curiosity to
Exactly.
deepen the potential for your teammates to grow and
Hmm.
also for we ourselves, if you're in a leadership role, to grow.
Hmm.
So that was a pretty powerful aha moment that I got from what you shared. But now I'm curious what insights you have as to what we can do as you talked about the diversity in the how we are the humanity in the workplace, right? Whether whatever race we are, ethnic background, and all the layers of diversity that you mentioned. What can we do specifically to really shorten the leadership runway for women? And maybe you could start by sharing with us how long did it take you to get to that people leader role?
My trajectory wasn't very long from the time I got into the workforce. I was in leadership. Well, I was in management definitely within the first 5 years. And then I was at the executive level within about 3 years after that. So within 10 years, I was able to get to the executive leadership level. And while I was on that track, I was like, I want to be a CEO of a major company. And what I learned is the higher I grew
Mm.
and I saw the realities of what it was like, I'm like, do I really want to do that? It's like,
Mm.
yeah, I'm not like my personality. I prefer to be behind the scenes. As a CEO, you need to be out front and center. I was like, I could do the COO. And
Mm.
yeah, I don't need to be the CEO. I don't need to be front and center. I don't need to be in the newspapers. I don't need to be I could stay in the background as a COO. So that's one of the things I learned with my journey. Sometimes we have a target and it's okay to shift. But to your question, how do we, as women of color, Black women, help each other grow in leadership? Can I just be real? I think we need to strip all of the pretense. I was in
Okay,
a
tell me more
call,
about that.
I was in a call, a webinar, which was amazing. Very powerful Black women were on it, and they're very accomplished, fit the physical image of what has been put out there as to what
Mm.
a Black woman of leadership should look like. And I feel like we need to strip the social expectations of us as Black women and show up as who we want to show up as and give ourselves permission to do that. And the people who that resonates with will be attracted to us. And those that it does not resonate with are not our people anyway. And I will give you an example. Carolyn Wanga.
Mm.
Have you heard of Carolyn Wanga?
No.
She's the CEO of Essence. She is the founder of Wanga Woman.
Mm.
When you Google her, those who are listening, please Google Carolyn Wanga. She does not fit in anybody's box or any mold or any social expectation of what a Black woman in leadership should look like. And
Oh,
she
I just pulled her picture up. She does not. She's
She
a
is beautiful. She
Mhm.
is authentic. She is knee deep in her cultural richness, and she is loud and proud about it.
Mm.
And I just absolutely love that for us as Black women, because what she's doing is she's stepping into her authenticity and leading by example, but also saying, hey, sister, you could do it too. You don't
Mm.
need to fit into what society says. You show up as yourself. You'll be all right.
Mm. It's interesting when you look at, I'd love to sort of peel back the layers. If that voice was so strong as a younger woman, or if she found that voice through success. Like, did she always have the power and the confidence to exert her voice, or did she find it later? That'd be interesting.
That would be an interesting question to ask her. Maybe you
Mhm.
could have her on the podcast.
That would be
Um,
so amazing.
I
It's
was, I was, I
consider it
was
done. It's
thinking,
going to be done, everybody. I don't know
yes,
when.
we're putting it out in the universe for
I'm speaking
Tiffany
it
that
into
Carolyn
existence.
Wanga, yes, will be on the podcast. I would say that she always knew.
Mm.
But when I look back at pictures of her when she was at corporate level at Target, she
Hmm.
didn't look the way she looks now.
So
So
she
as
found her
what
voice.
she found her voice, but she also found her space. She created her space, her place,
Mm.
because she created Wanga Woman. She's the founder, right? She works with Essence. So she came out of Target and went into Essence, created her own company, and she's just like, she's another woman I look up to. I'm like, one of these days.
Love it. Wanga Woman. So everyone, please Google that. This
Mhm.
has been an enlightening conversation, and I feel like we could have several more. This is just like when we do our mastermind group. But
Yeah, we just
I know we could just, right? I want to do some rapid fire questions, and this is
okay,
sort of like the look back. So tell
okay,
me a little bit. I have four rapid fires. As
okay.
you think back on, because season one is really about our 25-year-old self, right? How this generation sort of can pay it forward to the next one coming. What we wish we knew when we were 25. So what advice would you give Dr. Xaulanda, the 25-year-old version? What advice would you give her?
Well, the 25-year-old version of Dr. Xaulanda was actually Miss St. Croix. I don't tell many people that. And she very much felt like she needed to show up in honor as a brand ambassador for the island in a particular way.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it required her to wear a mask. And so I would
Mm,
tell my 25-year-old self to show up as you are while also trying to fulfill your obligation.
mm, love it.
Because it's
Okay.
not a either or. We just have to take the time to find the and.
Ooh, that's pretty powerful. Mm. One word to describe your view of leadership.
Servant.
Mm. Who's your superhero?
Okay, I know people say they mama or some Maven Marvel. I'm
Yeah.
not a copybook or superhero kind of person. When I think of who my superhero is, believe it or not, it's my daughter. Because who she has become as a woman, even as a child, I felt like
Mhm.
she chose me to be her mom. And she
Mm,
challenged me in ways that were totally unexpected.
mm,
And I feel like I'm a better human being because of her.
mm,
And talk about someone who can self advocate.
mm,
Sometimes I see her and I'm like, I didn't do that at that age. I wish I could do that at that age. I wish I could do that at this age. And she inspires me to like
I think
step out of the
we
step.
need her as the next guest on the show, Dr. Shalanda.
I'll hook you up and we'll try to work on her because she's very much an introvert, but she has a very strong voice. She has a strong knowing of who she is,
Mm,
and she inspires me and she challenges me every day. She asked me to do a video for her the other day and I sent it to her and she was like, "Okay, mom, that was nice, but you can dig a little deeper. Like that was so surface level." I was like, "Okay, ma'am, let me go back and redo this."
I
Yeah,
bet.
and I sent the second one and she was like, "Yeah, that was better, but I still think you need to ponder on the question and dig a little deeper, but I'll let you off the hook for now. I'll let you marinate on that."
Wow. I bet your clients are really benefiting from her guidance and leadership.
She's dynamic. She's very much a detail-oriented data analytics person. And so for the client that we're working with, she does all the data analytics for them and she runs all the reports. And I'm usually the one the client sees. And we went into this meeting with the OO, members of the legal team, members of the project team we were on. And before the meeting, I said, "You're going to need to take the lead on this meeting because you created all these reports. I mean, who better to explain to them what the trends that you're seeing, what the recommendations are?" And I said, "I'll just be here if you need me to jump in and reinforce or redirect or give you a wink or whatever." And it was the one time I sat pausing. I'm like, "Mm."
Mm,
And I just let her do
did
it.
the
And I was
thing.
like, yeah, I got off the call and I was like, "I'm so proud of you." Like, I couldn't do that at her age.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So So, and what books are you currently reading now?
I'll share the book that I just finished.
Okay.
It's called Mind Your Mindset.
Wow.
The science that shows success starts with your thinking. And it's by Michael Hyatt and Megan Hyatt Miller. And the aha from this book is I took a course of positive intelligence about a year ago where it talks about your saboteurs and what are your top three saboteurs and being aware when those voices start to chatter consciously or unconsciously. This book was a really good follow-up to that program, particularly in the times that we're in. Because
Mm,
as we're consuming information, it is very easy for that narrator to get on that hamster wheel of negativity, of doom and gloom. And you got to check the stories you're telling yourself. Is it
mm,
true? I mean, is this story factual? Or is this story being perpetuated based on past experience, based on fear, based on the things that other people want us to believe versus what is? And the only way to get clarity in that is to mind your mindset. Like be aware of that narrator. And when it starts talking, you start to challenge it. And then you redirect because sometimes when we listen to our stories, we're like, well, actually, that's not true. The facts are different. Mr. Nelson, the gentleman that plucked me out of St. Croix to Minnesota, used to say, the facts are stubborn. People will always have feelings about whatever is happening or whatever they think the data is saying. They would have their own interpretations, but facts are stubborn. And so
mm.
this book I thought was a very good reminder, particularly now, for us to mind our mindset, particularly as we're on this journey of life where we want to be successful.
Thank you very much for sharing that. We are, for those that are listening, you've heard me ask this question about the book. There is a book list for all of
Mhm.
the guests on the show, and this will be on it. I love your mission to create people-focused solutions. So, what do you see in the future or on the horizon for Sky Group?
What do I see on the horizon for the Shaskai group? I see that we're going to go into more organizations that are willing to create not only productive workspaces, but
Mhm.
psychologically safe workspaces for their team members. And the team members could be leaders, managers, employees. I know that right now there's all of these boycotts happening about big corporations. I think while old guards are being broken down, it's an opportunity to give birth to a new way of working, a new way of living, a new way
Mhm.
of interacting with each other. And so I'm hopeful that we would be in that space with those people making those impactful changes.
You'll have to join me to your point. I have a new webinar called The Death of DE&I, 5 behaviors that shift fear and apathy into innovation. And I can't wait to have these conversations, and I would love for you to be a part of some of those sessions.
I would love it.
But as we wrap up today's enlightening conversation, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to you, Dr. Shalanda, for
Ooh.
sharing invaluable insights and experiences with us. Your journey and dedication to fostering humanity within organizations is inspiring. And I just love your story and your connection with your superhero, your daughter. At Virtual Partner, we are committed as well to transforming workplaces into hubs of innovation and inclusivity. And we're on a mission to gather insights and stories from women leaders, just like what you've heard today with Dr. Shalanda worldwide, so we can understand challenges and triumphs that women are facing in the workplace. If you're watching, Your voice matters to us as well, and we'd love to hear from you. So before we go, if you're inspired by what you heard and you want to join in our mission to empower women leaders, don't forget to participate in the She Rises Global Impact Survey. You can find it on our website at virtualpartner.biz/how she rises. And if you're watching the replay, I'm sure at some point you're going to see a QR code pop up. You can take a picture of that and take the survey. You're going to help us shape future discussions and initiatives aimed at supporting women in leadership. Together, I believe that we can create a future where equity prevails and every woman has the opportunity to rise. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of She Rises. Stay inspired, stay empowered, and keep rising. Until the next time.
That's a wrap for today's episode of She Rises. I hope you found inspiration, insight, and the motivation to keep pushing forward on your leadership journey. Remember, success isn't about reaching the top. It's about lifting others as you rise. If you love this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other powerhouse women in your life. Follow me, Tiffany-O, and Virtual Partner for more resources on leadership, organizational growth, and creating workplaces where humanity thrives. Until next time, keep rising, keep leading, and keep making an impact.